From unnatural particles and gravitational anomalies to reappearing ghost ships, these mysterious Antarctic secrets are confusing scientists. Up first are Antarctic particles. The Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA, is a device that measures cosmic rays, more specifically the high-energy neutrinos that come off them. ANITA floated on a balloon high above the Antarctic ice sheet, gazing at the stars for several years. So imagine the researchers' shock when the instruments meant to read energy coming from the stars detected those same high-energy neutrinos coming up from the Earth. Now, low-energy neutrinos can pass through quite a bit of material, as they are very small and can pass through the gaps in atoms. But high-energy neutrinos have a much larger footprint and are more easily deflected and intercepted. So how did these relatively easy to deflect neutrinos come up through the Earth? Did they pass all the way through, or is there another explanation? Scientists have proposed everything from neutrinos passing all the way through the planet or getting reflected around inside like an inverse disco ball, to a discovery of an entirely new neutrino or even dark matter. However, others think the answer is much more mundane. The neutrinos simply came down from outer space, missing ANITA, and then entered the Antarctic ice, where they hit a sort of compacted snow called firn. Firn is between glacial ice and snow, and can have pockets of low or high density, which may allow it to reflect neutrinos back up towards space. Scientists still aren't really sure what's going on though. Next is Shackleton's ship. Ernest Shackleton is one of the great explorers of world history, having made his fame off of the rather disastrous attempt to reach the South Pole with his ship Endurance. It wasn't his first trip to Antarctica, and far from his first time in the cold, but this time the ship got stuck in an ice floe. The crew would spend 2 months on the ice before managing to make an equally long journey to rescue, but the ship was swallowed whole by the floe, and then vanished into the cruel Antarctic Sea. You'd be forgiven for thinking the ship had sunk, totally destroyed, and would never be seen again, but you'd be wrong. In the mid-1960s, another ship went searching for the Endurance, tracing her path, and would get to see a once-in-a-lifetime event. The ice floe heaved, split, and spat forth the Endurance, her hull pushed high into the sky before she was sucked back under the ice and vanished for good. In 2022, researchers would successfully discover the wreckage beneath the ice, scanning it through the crust for a 3D rendering. Being stuck beneath dangerous sea ice 3 kilometers under the surface, it is likely Endurance will remain there for the rest of history. Next is the green crab crisis. Green crab are some of the most successful colonizers in the animal kingdom. Rapidly adaptable, small enough to survive anywhere, often in large numbers, and very successful predators, these crabs can take up roots just about anywhere the water is the right temperature for them to live in. So you might think it's a little silly to bring a whole bunch of them and start farming them off the coast of Chile, and now, several years after that decision was made, we know it was a bad idea. Green crab have been swarming up the Pacific coast of the Americas, devastating several ecosystems. But they also taste delicious, so it isn't too bad. It's not like there's nothing that eats crabs along the Pacific coast anyways, but Antarctica is a different story. For now, the waters are too cold for the green crab to push that far south, but if we know anything about the future, it's that the world's waters will warm more. And as they do, the crabs will slowly flood south, or get picked up and carried in the ballast of ships, and Antarctica will eventually be infested with them. Antarctica is a unique environment, with much less diversity and competition to halt the spread of the green crab, which makes it especially dangerous and vulnerable. So far as we know, Antarctica is currently free of green crab influence, but that may not last long. Next is Totten Glacier. Melting sea ice is one of the greatest threats to the world's oceans. It raises sea levels, decreases salinity, and introduces more cold water than would normally be in the ocean. But recently scientists discovered something even more chilling. A massive glacier field in Antarctica known as the Totten Glacier Catchment, which is under serious threat. The ice field is larger than the more famous West Antarctic ice sheet, and should be less of a threat due to its size and therefore inherent stability, except it isn't stable. Deep sea channels beneath the ice are pumping warm water into the underside of the glacier, encouraging it to melt faster than it should. Should the entire field melt, global sea levels would rise 11 feet, destroying numerous cities around the world. Next is Maud Rise Polynya. The Antarctic ice sheet may look smooth and pristine from the air, but it is absolutely not. It's filled with small holes and cracks which are known as polynya. Polynya are complex and can occur for a vast variety of reasons, often many of which are deeply interconnected. Maud-Rise polynya is, however, one of the largest and most sudden polynyas ever to appear. It practically appeared overnight, like a sudden gash in the ice sheet larger than the country of Wales. Unlike other polynyas which come and go, however, Maud-Rise has not shrunk, resealed, or vanished. It's believed that a strong current, strengthened by unusually warm and salty water, encountered the deep-sea mountain of Maud-Rise, which then drove this current up its face and into the ice sheet above. This new warm water current is then thought to have pushed the ice apart, opening up this strange and massive gash in the sheet. It's unknown how long the ice will stay this way, but it will likely be for decades if not longer. Then again, with how quickly the world's climate is changing, scientists really can't make any certain predictions. Next is the ice storm. Antarctica is one of the most remote and isolated places on Earth. Only a handful of people are allowed to visit on tours, and even fewer are chosen to live on the continent. So it's no wonder Antarctic ghost stories have a special flavor of terror. In 2016, a small outpost was rocked with a storm, and the 3 occupants were trapped inside the squall. The storm was a big one, set to last weeks, and so the crew hunkered down. It didn't take long for the first cracks to show, even amongst these professional researchers. After a week of complaining of a growing whining and speaking in his head, Mike Leash was eventually scrabbling at the doors, even as his colleagues tried to restrain him, and eventually bursted out into the storm. Despite their desire to save his life, none of the crew was going to go out into a zero-visibility Antarctic ice storm, and Mike disappeared. The storm cooled off 2 days later, leaving the world covered in a thick coating of snow. The crew went out to find what happened to Mike, only to see him standing just 100 steps from the front door. When they approached him, though, they were shocked to find it was just his clothes, frozen solid and completely empty of Mike's body. Despite a recovery attempt, Mike was not able to be found. It's thought he may have stripped while hypothermic and then been buried under the snowstorm, but why then would his clothes be standing in place? Something strange happened here. And finally is the Wilkes gravity anomaly. A negative gravity anomaly was detected under the ice of Wilkes Land, and it has scientists stumped. It may sound a little sci-fi, but there are actually gravitational anomalies all over the world, and they can help us discover some pretty interesting things. If the Earth were actually a totally smooth, consistent ball, then gravity would be experienced the same all over the planet. But the Earth isn't smooth, and gravity is not consistent. These gravitational anomalies are small shifts away from the predicted ideal gravitational value, and can be used to find dense ore deposits beneath the Earth's surface. Other things can also cause anomalies though, like caves or caverns, where the Earth isn't as dense as it hypothetically should be. A positive anomaly means gravity is stronger than expected there, maybe due to a mountain or dense elements underground, while a negative gravitational anomaly means gravity is weaker than expected. This could be for any number of reasons, but usually an unseen void in the Earth is the culprit. In the case of the Wilkes gravity anomaly, scientists still aren't really sure what's causing it. However, the most plausible theory is that of an old meteor crater that was then frozen over by the ice from the Ice Age. Still, no one is really truly sure what is causing this anomaly.
In 2017, Antarctica saw a dramatic event when a massive hole, roughly the size of Ireland, appeared in its ice. Known as a polynya, this hole, which stretches across 78,000 square kilometers, is the largest of its kind observed since the 1970s and the first to form in 40 years. Located in the Weddell Sea of the Southern Ocean, this giant opening was created by warmer, saltier water from deeper ocean layers rising up and melting the ice above. As this warm water encounters the colder surface water, it cools and sinks only to be reheated and pushed back to the surface in a continuous cycle. While scientists are still puzzling over the exact reasons behind the formation of of these giant holes, some suggest they might be used by marine mammals for breathing. Researchers are actively studying these intriguing holes to better understand their formation and impact on the Antarctic environment. In Antarctica's fossil-rich regions, scientists have uncovered remarkably well-preserved remains of ancient forests that date back around 120 million years. These forests thrived when Antarctica was part of the supercontinent Gondwana, a far cry from the icy desert it is today. Some imaginative theories suggest these fossilized forests might be remnants of an ancient lost civilization. While these ideas definitely capture the imagination, the current scientific consensus is that these fossils are valuable clues about Antarctica's warmer, greener past when it was home to lush vegetation and diverse ecosystems. Beneath the thick ice sheets of Antarctica lies a hidden marvel, the Gamburtsev Mountains. Stretching over 1,200 kilometers and rising up to 3,000 meters, about a third of the height of Mount Everest, these mountains remain largely concealed under a 2,000 to 4,000 kilometer thick ice layer. Discovered in 1958 by Russian scientists who noticed unusual gravity fluctuations while traveling across Antarctica, these mountains are named after Soviet geophysicist Grigory A. Gamburtsev. Despite never having directly observed these mountains, scientists use radar, gravity, and magnetic readings to study them and uncover their secrets. The Gamburtsevs have long puzzled researchers due to their age, estimated at around 1 billion years, as they should have eroded away over such a long period of time. One prevailing theory suggests that a frozen mantle may be shielding these ancient peaks from the relentless forces of erosion, preserving their grandeur beneath the ice. Antarctica is of course known for its harsh and freezing conditions, and because of this, it is home to some remarkable microorganisms, including a unique species of fungi that thrives in this icy environment. Unlike the fungi you might find in warm, forested areas, these Antarctic fungi have adapted to survive the extreme cold by feeding on the old wooden huts left behind by early explorers. Another intriguing type of fungi in Antarctica has been discovered living off of the petroleum leaks from abandoned fuel containers. This type of fungi is particularly interesting because scientists are exploring its potential for cleaning up larger oil spills around the world. By studying these resilient fungi, researchers hope to harness their capabilities for environmental cleanup and gain insights into how life can adapt to the most extreme conditions on Earth. You might have heard whispers online about mysterious pyramids hidden beneath Antarctica's icy surface. Some theories suggest that these could be ancient structures built by aliens, lost civilizations, or even long-lost explorers. However, before you start picturing an Antarctic version of Egypt's Great Pyramid of Giza, let's set the record straight. There is no evidence supporting the existence of man-made pyramids in Antarctica. What some interpret as pyramids are actually natural mountain formations. In 2016, satellite images highlighted a particularly striking peak in the Ellsworth Mountains, which sparked headlines and speculation, but experts confirm that these so-called pyramids are simply just impressive examples of glacial horns, shaped by natural geological processes over a millennia. While the name pyramid does appear in several official Antarctic mountain names, these are just descriptive of their shapes and not evidence of hidden ancient architecture. In early 2017, a satellite image of Antarctica sparked a flurry of excitement and speculation online when it appeared to show what some claimed was a giant staircase. Posted on a conspiracy theory forum where all the craziest information is, the image led to wild theories suggesting it could be an alien landing site. While some jumped to extraterrestrial conclusions, others proposed more plausible explanations, claims such as a glitch in the camera or snow formations. Despite the buzz, skeptics pointed out that the image lacked specific coordinates and could be a natural anomaly like snow dunes or ridges. Researchers and experts generally attribute such formations to natural processes rather than mysterious or alien origins, but the image certainly added another intriguing layer to the many conspiracy theories surrounding Antarctica. For this one, instead of just taking a look at this strange structure, we are climbing it. Well, not we, but someone did. In January 2013, a team of climbers and filmmakers, including Leo Holding, Sean Leary, Jason Pickles, Chris Rabone, and Alistair Lee, tackled a new route up the northeast ridge of Ulvitana in Antarctica's Fenrisk-Jeften Range. This 35-pitch route, stretching 1,750 meters, was the fourth ascent of Ulvitana, the highest peak in the range, known for its striking spire-like shape. Arriving on December 22nd, the team set up a festive base camp before spending 10 challenging days scaling the ridge through difficult 5.12 A2 terrain. Despite extreme cold, with temperatures dropping to -35 degrees Celsius and even a severe snowstorm, they reached the summit on January 24th. Although they had initially planned to base jump from the peak, dangerous weather conditions led them to descend via traditional methods. The team's adventure, marked by intense climbing and harsh conditions, was captured in a film and celebrated as a major achievement in Antarctic climbing. The Hollow Earth theory is like something straight out of a sci-fi adventure, suggesting that beneath Antarctica's icy crust lies a gateway to a colossal, hollow world. Imagine a hidden realm, complete with its own advanced civilization, ecosystems, and maybe even mystical creatures, all tucked away in Earth's hollow core. Although this theory captures the imagination and has inspired countless stories in speculative fiction, it doesn't necessarily hold up under scientific scrutiny. Geologists and researchers firmly argue that our planet is solid with a layered structure, not a giant empty sphere. But I've never been, so maybe one day. I don't know. I'm not going to the center of the earth. I'm not Josh Hutcherson. Despite its freezing temperatures, Antarctica is home to several volcanoes, including 4 on Ross Island. While most of these volcanoes are dormant, Mount Erebus stands out as the world's southernmost active volcano and Antarctica's second highest peak, reaching 3,800 meters. Over the past 30 years, Mount Erebus has shown increased volcanic activity, featuring a remarkable landscape of liquid magma and ancient lava lakes that have been boiling for about 1.3 million years. Due to its remote location and harsh weather, access to Mount Erebus is definitely limited, but a team of scientists managed to climb it in 2013. They braved snow, rocks, and glaciers to reach the summit, where they discovered life thriving in the volcano's heat, including microorganisms living in ice caves and soil. These extreme conditions make these organisms some of the most unique and resilient in the entire world. Beneath Antarctica's thick ice sheet lies Lake Vostok, an enormous subglacial lake that remains hidden from view and has intrigued scientists for years. This vast lake, which is roughly the size of Lake Ontario, sits under miles of ice and is home to unique microbial life that thrives in extreme conditions. Because Lake Vostok has been isolated from the rest of the world for millions of years, its environment has led to some fascinating theories. Scientists speculate that the lake could harbor hidden ecosystems or even unknown forms of life adapted to its extreme conditions. The discovery of these extremophiles, microorganisms that survive in such harsh environments, fuels excitement and curiosity, hinting at the possibility of life forms that could exist in other extreme environments, possibly even ones beyond our own planet.
First on our list today, we have the discovery and revival of an ancient virus freed from the Antarctic permafrost after 48,500 years. Oh my gosh, have we learned nothing from sci-fi and television? You do not restore ancient viruses. You don't do it. Well, they did it. The zombie virus was discovered as a result of melting ice in the Antarctic region after laying dormant for tens of thousands of years. And honestly, scientists believe that while the risks are low, much like your ex, it does raise red flags as a potential endangerment to human health. The virus was returned to its former infectious glory in a lab after being inserted with cultured cells. Luckily for us, as of yet, scientists have only attempted to reanimate viruses that target single-cell amoebas, not humans or animals. That's great and all, but it still seems like pretty risky business to me. The scientist who performed the reanimation maintains he has done so to shed light on the potential risk of more dangerous viruses' ability to resurface and affect humans should the Antarctic permafrost continue to melt. Not only that, but as the ice continues to thaw, it also has the potential to release chemical and radioactive waste into our ecosystems. So, think about that. Next up, we have the discovery of a hidden landmass, frozen in time and ice, and estimated to be bigger than Belgium. The landscape consists of hills and valleys believed to have been carved by ancient rivers over millions of years ago. Its existence was confirmed using a technique called radio echo sounding, which uses sound waves to determine distances, based off of which corresponding maps of underground structures and landscapes can be created. Without even laying eyes on an area, we are able to determine the heights of its peaks and the depths of its deepest points. The area of land stretching 32,000 square kilometers, 12,000 square miles, is a scientific marvel, as scientists believe its climate and geology to have been massively different from that of modern-day Antarctica. Which of course brings me to my next point. Also discovered within the ice and hidden beneath the frozen desert were the remains of an estimated 90 million year old subtropical rainforest. Scientists were so excited when, deep beneath the ice, they discovered an incredibly well-preserved network of root systems within a sediment core sample. A sediment core sample is basically like a ground extraction that shows all the layers of sediment that have settled over the last, I guess in this case, 90 million years. Not only did they find root systems, but the soil was so well preserved that they were also able to find traces of pollen, spores, and the remains of flowering plants. Based on these findings, it was concluded that the coast of West Antarctica at one point in time contained a thick, swampy rainforest which was home to a large variety of plant and animal species. Scientists also concluded weather patterns of heavy rainfall and heightened levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Next on the list we have BLOOD Falls. I apologize for having to spell it out for you. I don't think I'm allowed to say that word on here, but just by the look, I'm sure you can guess where the name comes from. So let's talk about the color. If you want to guess how it happens, I'll give you a moment. Maybe pause the video, head to the comments, lock in your answer. You done? Okay, the answer is iron, but not in the way you'd think. The red waters are rich in iron, but they don't actually turn red until they come into contact with the air. Well, maybe you did think that, but let me explain further. It's actually a mix of iron oxides and hydroxides along with high salt content in the water, chlorine, and magnesium that give the river flow its yellow, orange, and reddish coloring rather than the classic like murky brown we would usually see coming out of eroded sink faucets. Super creepy, but again, super cool. Next up we have the discovery of ancient bacteria like nothing we've ever seen on Earth before. Like, it's so strange, scientists wonder if it might possibly have come from like outer space. Perhaps a passenger on an ancient asteroid that arrived on Earth millions of years ago. And why do they think that? Well, because generally bacteria has a minimum requirement of 6 things it needs in order to survive, and those things are food, acidity, time, generally a warm temperature, oxygen, and moisture. But this bacteria just needs air, making it an absolute scientific anomaly and a massive discovery that moves us forward in our understanding of the way in which extraterrestrial organisms might be able to survive on other planets and in space. What do you guys think? As we move past our halfway point, let's go beneath the ice all the way down to the Antarctic seafloor, where the once lost ship Endurance was discovered in impeccable condition, preserved by the country's icy waters. For a long time, the Endurance shipwreck remained one of the greatest undiscovered mysteries, but that all changed in 2022 when, at a depth of 3,008 meters, the vessel was found, and that's 9,868.8 feet. The discovery was made via a combination of helicopters, underwater robots, and other state-of-the-art technology, which allowed it to be remotely filmed and explored. Although the wreck was crushed by ice and sunk over 100 years ago, the ship's name was Although the wreck was crushed by ice and sunk over 100 years ago, the ship's name was still clearly legible along the stern of the vessel. And this is an incredible scientific feat as it highlights the extreme advances in technology, allowing us to explore some of the most inhospitable and extreme depths of our oceans. And next up we have a freaky looking, lanky underwater insect known as the giant sea spider. While they aren't actually spiders, they are in fact part of the insect family, and they are the largest sea spider found anywhere in the world, with some showing off a leg span of up to 10 inches. Ooh. These animals belong to a rare group that have no need for a respiratory system, breathing instead through their digestive system. The animal typically feeds off anemones, seaworms, jellyfish, sponges, and soft corals, making it technically carnivorous, and it feeds using a small tube which it inserts into its soft-bodied prey, allowing it to literally suck their guts out. Gross. As for the spider's guts, those are stored in the long, spindly legs of the creature, commonly found in shallow waters surrounding Antarctica. However, they have also been spotted at depths of 7,000 meters, 23,000 feet, making them highly adaptable to changes in both pressure and environment. Next up, we have another relative giant, the giant Antarctic scaleworm, which measures in at 20 centimeters, 7.8 inches long, and 10 centimeters, 4 inches wide. Now, that might not seem gigantic to you, but remember, it's a worm, so yeah, it's pretty big. And it's also super uncomfortable to look at. Well, from head on, but the underbelly is actually quite cool, looking as though the creature is lined with shiny gold feathers along its edges, which are actually appendages that help it move along rock formations and the sea floor. Its back is covered in scales that act as fully functioning body armor to protect against predators. Back to the head, which is, to put it nicely, unpleasant, and it's not even a head, really, it's just a fully retractable throat. While there is still so much we don't know about this recently discovered creature, the two sharp fangs on both its top and bottom jaw suggest it has a carnivorous diet and hunting rather than scavenging behavior. The animal is known to enjoy depths of up to 1,640 feet, and they're also super good for the underwater ecosystem, assisting in the building of reefs by recycling ocean waste through a process called worm composting, where they turn food scraps into other organic material that acts like soil for the sea floor. Next up, in our top two today, we have Mount Erebus, the world's southernmost, fully active volcano that last erupted in 2020 and contains a very elusive lava lake. The lava lake sits within the volcano, and it's basically a pool of molten lava that never hardens, but instead remains in a constant viscous fluid state. While you might have assumed this kind of thing to exist at the bottom of every active volcano around the world, you'd be incorrect, as they are actually incredibly rare because they require an incredibly specific set of conditions to be able to form. You see, a volcano's lava is generally held way underground in something called a magma chamber that connects to a volcano through an underground channel in the Earth's crust. And ever so often, under the right conditions, the magma chamber sends lava shooting up through the channel and the crater of the volcano into the atmosphere. A lava lake is different. It exists above ground within the crater of a volcano, and the bottom of the lake is connected to the magma chamber by a much shorter passageway called a conduit, which is basically like a long pipe. The lava from the chamber rises into the lake, and when the lava begins to cool, it moves back down towards the chamber to heat and rise once more. Thus, the lake remains unfrozen and in constant flow. Also a pretty cool sight to see. And finally, last on the list, we have ancient skulls, or at least that's what they kind of look like. These elongated skulls were allegedly found in 2016 by a team of archaeologists working in Antarctica. The discovery was shocking, and the bones dated all the way back to 1820, and it was originally believed that humans had not set foot in Antarctica until hundreds of years later. Of course, the timeline, along with the appearance of the bones, has led many to speculate that these bones are not belonging to the first humans in Antarctica, but rather the first extraterrestrials on Earth. While scientists are still baffled by the age of the bones, the shape of them didn't come as too much of a surprise to professionals, as the elongated skulls have been discovered in other places around the world and have been attributed to ritualistic physical cultural practices done by certain ancient societies. It has been said, however, that these particular skulls appear to not only be elongated, but much bigger than any to have ever been found before. So, who knows, maybe aliens aren't such a bad guess after all.
And we're kicking off this list with pyramids. So a couple years back, satellite images revealed a mysterious triangular formation in Antarctica's desolate landscape. When the images hit social media, debates and speculations about the origin of this quote-unquote pyramid began. The pyramid shape appeared in satellite images of the Ellsworth mountain range located in the southern reaches of Antarctica. It seemed to have a striking resemblance to the dimensions of Egypt's iconic Great Pyramid of Giza, measuring 2 kilometers in each direction from its square base. And as these images circulated on social media platforms, the conspiracy theories began to flow. Now, scientists attribute these formations to natural processes and optical illusions, but perhaps there's a deeper secret being hidden from us in the cold, inhospitable terrain of Antarctica. Was there some ancient civilization that used to call the South Pole home? Did a group of beings from somewhere beyond our planet construct it? I don't know, I'm just here to ask the important questions. And now I'm here to tell you that if you are liking our channel so far, if you're new here, why not hit that subscribe button? We have awesome videos coming at you on the daily, plenty to see. Don't miss out. Do that right now. Next up, we have the ANITA discovery. The Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA, is a sophisticated scientific tool in the form of a high-tech balloon operated by NASA, floating above Antarctica. Its mission is to track subatomic particles generated by the interactions of high-energy neutrinos entering Earth's atmosphere from the depths of space. But a few years ago, ANITA made a strange discovery. It detected neutrinos seemingly originating from beneath the Earth's surface, quite the departure from its intended function of capturing spaceborne neutrinos. One of the more fun hypotheses behind this is that these detected particles may be signs of a possible parallel universe where the fundamental laws of our own universe might operate in complete reverse. Now, this is really just speculative, but it's a pretty fascinating idea. Scientists were pretty perplexed by these findings, and as of right now, there still isn't a definitive explanation. At number 8, we have the Ross Island haunting. Ross Island is not only home to the McMurdo Station, a hub for scientific research, it also harbors something much darker. It's rumored to be haunted. There was a tragic plane crash on the island in 1979, and this crash claimed the lives of 257 people. Over the years, visitors to Ross Island have reported unsettling occurrences describing ghostly footsteps echoing in the icy darkness and mysterious voices that seem to emanate from nowhere. Some claim to have come face to face with full-on apparitions, believing to be the restless spirits of the plane crash victims, wandering the frigid snow-covered landscape for eternity. The haunting stories surrounding Ross Island have continued to be passed down through generations of Antarctic explorers and researchers. Number 7, the UFO crash landing. In 2018, an ex-Navy SEAL who had worked in the South Pole revealed some intriguing information to an investigative journalist named Linda Moulton Howe about an alien structure he once visited. He wished to remain anonymous as this information was highly classified. In August of 2003, this individual and his team had been tasked with a highly classified objective under the guise of a research reconnaissance mission. They arrived at their destination where they found a large dark structure protruding from the ice. There were doors on it, these big square slabs cut into the structure that when you push on kind of receded into the building, opening up into this long hallway. The inside of the structure was lit green by an unknown source, and adorning the walls were strange hieroglyphics. But they didn't resemble any hieroglyphics seen here on Earth. This is a pretty outlandish story. Impossible to prove, but hard to discredit completely because it's just hearsay, really, but it is fascinating. Plus, Antarctica is one of the most unpopulated places on Earth. It would be a good spot for little green men from space to operate without the presence of prying eyes. So let's stay on the topic of UFOs for a minute and discuss another possible UFO crash landing in Antarctica, this time spotted with satellite images. YouTube channel Secure Team 10 shared a video back in 2018 zooming close in on a small island just off the coast of Antarctica, which seemed to show a long long, sharp mark in the snow, as if something had crashed and then skidded along. Now, this island has the exact same environment as Antarctica. It seems to be a piece of it that broke off and floated away. So it's inhospitable, totally void of people. So what is this object? The narrator describes it as cigar-shaped, covered by mounds of snow. Whatever the object is, it's also very large, and the trail it left behind is almost 1,000 meters long. The trail behind this mysterious object leads to a mountain, and there's debris that seems to have been pushed out at the base. It looks like as if the object flew down and crashed into the mountain before skidding along the ice where it now sits. Part of me thinks there could have been an avalanche or something on the mountain, and maybe this is just a piece of rock that slid out extra far. I don't know. What do you all think, though? At number 5, we have Scott's Hut. Back to the haunted realm now. In 1911, 25 men led by Sir Robert Scott departed from this hut in Cape Evans on an expedition to the South Pole. An expedition they would never return from. The hut now stands just as it did all those years ago. There are belongings laying around, scientific equipment, even the frozen penguins the group had been studying remain on the outside of the hut. It's almost completely frozen in time. And as intriguing as it would be to give this place a visit, staff and visitors do claim to have an odd feeling when stepping inside it. There's a sadness about the place, an emptiness, a place that was so full of life, with daring explorers about to begin an epic journey, never to come back. Only maybe they did come back. It's no surprise that with an eerie history like that, some folks believe the hut to be haunted. Ghostly whispers, shadowy figures, a sense of not being alone. These are just some of the things guests have reported during their visits. Number 4, the giant hole. In 2017, researchers in Antarctica observed a massive polynya, a large area of open water within the sea ice, suddenly appearing. It was already massive, but things got even crazier when the polynya expanded at an unprecedented rate, increasing in size by more than 8 times within just a few weeks. The discovery was made in Weddell Sea, an area known for its harsh freezing conditions. Polynyas are not uncommon in Antarctica, but their sudden and substantial growth is a more rare occurrence. That puzzled the researchers. These gaps in the ice are usually maintained by complex processes, ocean currents, temperature variations, but the rapid expansion of this particular one challenged existing scientific understanding. Researchers and climate experts were left with a series of questions. What was causing this rapid expansion? Was it related to climate change, natural variability, or some other unknown factor? And the scientific community set out to study this event with the use of satellite imagery, ocean sensors, and computer models. But the prevailing theory is that the polynya was caused by intense cyclones. Alright, next let's talk about all the military presence in Antarctica. What's going on there? Let's start by going all the way back to World War II. There have been rumors for decades that Mr. H himself, the dictator of Germany, might have established a covert base in Antarctica. As for what they were doing there are lots of rumors, but the SS were super into mysticism and the occult, always in pursuit of ancient artifacts that they believed had powers that could aid in their conquest. Pretty wild, but maybe they were after something hidden somewhere in the frozen tundra. After the war in 1946 and 47, the US sent a huge fleet to Antarctica, and many believe that they had been tasked with destroying this secret German base. As for more contemporary military activities, who knows what's going on? Just imagine vast hidden research facilities buried beneath the ice, or cutting-edge technology being tested in the harshest conditions imaginable. Conspiracies suggest everything from advanced weaponry to secretive scientific experiments related to climate change or extraterrestrial phenomena. Who knows? And number 2 is Deception Island. Deception Island, nestled in the icy expanse of Antarctica, holds a chilling history that goes beyond its freezing temperatures. Once a bustling whalers station, remnants of this grim past still linger in the form of whale bones strewn across some of its beaches, a reminder of an industry that relentlessly hunted these beautiful creatures. When the Great Depression hit and oil prices plummeted, the whalers station was abandoned, only to be repurposed later as a British World War II base. Now today, visitors to Whalers Bay, a landing site on this island have shared tales of their experiences. Some have reported witnessing eerie apparitions, strange orbs of light. Some have even claimed to hear disembodied voices echoing across the ice. In 2009, when the crew of the American TV show Destination Truth ventured to the bay, they captured unexplained bangs and the unsettling sight of a shadowy figure roaming among the decaying ruins. The crew even captured a thermal signature in a window and an SOS signal emanating from one of the abandoned shacks. But finally, we have the theory that Atlantis could have been located deep beneath the ice of Antarctica. According to Plato, Atlantis was this advanced civilization that mysteriously vanished overnight. Now, when we think of Atlantis, we usually picture it in the sunny Mediterranean, not, buried under all that ice down south. But here's the twist. Antarctica wasn't always an icy wasteland. Millions of years ago, it had forests and a much milder climate. So some folks propose that Atlantis could have existed in Antarctica before it froze over, or some other ancient civilization. They point to satellite images showing peculiar shapes under the ice, speculating that these could be remnants of the lost city. We already talked about a pyramid earlier. That could have something to do with it. Scientists, though, of course, remain skeptical. They've been studying Antarctica for years, haven't found any concrete evidence to support this idea, but it's fun to think about. Could that pyramid shape, again, possibly play into this? Who knows? And we're starting things off with the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. So this is actually a case where the crew managed to make it back home, but it was a struggle. The Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, led by Sir Ernest Shackleton, aimed to cross Antarctica from the Weddell Sea to the Ross Sea. In August of 1914, the expedition set sail from England aboard the Endurance, a ship built to withstand the icy Antarctic waters. But in January of 1915, the ship became trapped in the pack ice of the Weddell Sea, and for months the crew waited, hoping for the ice to finally release its grip, but the Endurance eventually sank. And now the crew was stranded on drifting ice floes where they had to just camp. And when the ice finally broke in April of 1916, the crew sailed in lifeboats to reach Elephant Island. But they realized rescue was going to be unlikely there. So Shackleton and a small crew embarked on an 800-mile open boat journey to South Georgia Island, where there was a whaling station. After a grueling 16-day journey across the Southern Ocean, they reached South Georgia Island. Shackleton and a few men then trekked across the island's rugged terrain to reach the whaling station, and after several attempts, Shackleton successfully rescued the remaining crew on Elephant Island in August of that year. The Ken Boruc Air Antarctica crash. Bob Heath was an experienced Canadian pilot. He worked in the Northwest Territories, piloting scientists to ice floes to study polar bears, and during the fall he would pilot a twin otter all the way to Antarctica. This would be a 4-day-long trip. There he'd spend the entire winter piloting scientists to various research stations. When spring hit, he'd travel back home, making pit stops on his way to visit family in Winnipeg and Toronto. In 2013, Heath took off on another flight to Antarctica along with 2 other crew, and they were set to arrive at Terra Nova Bay Research Station, but they never showed up. 2 days went by with no sign of the crew until a search and rescue crew spotted the tail of the plane jutting out from a snow-covered mountain in the Queen Alexandra mountain range. The crash was determined to be unsurvivable. What makes the case even more distressing is that the bodies were never recovered, as attempting to do so would be incredibly dangerous. They had just crashed in too precarious a spot. Number 8, Flight 571. On October 13th, 1972, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, carrying 45 passengers and crew, including members of the Uruguayan rugby team and their friends and family, crashed into the Andes Mountains in Argentina. 27 of the 45-person crew had actually survived the initial crash, but they had limited food supplies, little warm clothing, and no way of communicating with the outside world. In order to survive, alive, they resorted to pretty drastic measures. In the days following the crash, the passengers relied on first whatever meager rations they had, but as these supplies just continued to dwindle and hope of rescue began to fade, desperation set in. In order to stay alive, some of these survivors made the difficult decision to resort to cannibalism. They consumed the bodies of the deceased passengers who had died in the crash or succumbed to the harsh weather conditions, and after more than 2 months in the mountains, 2 of the passengers finally managed to make contact with 3 men on horseback, like days out from their initial crash landing site, and these guys ended up going for help, and finally after 72 days in the wilderness, the remaining 14 survivors were rescued. In at number 7, we have the Swedish Antarctic Expedition. The Swedish Antarctic Expedition of 1901 to 1904, led by Otto Nordenskjöld, encountered a crisis when their ship, which was actually called the Antarctic, got stuck in the ice of the Weddell Sea in 1903. They were unable to free the ship, forcing the crew to abandon it. Stranded on the ice, they survived by hunting seals and penguins, melting ice for water, and constructing a basic shelter made out of stone. They waited for rescue for almost a year, and then in November of 1903, the crew managed to launch lifeboats and reached Paulet Island, finding supplies from a previous expedition. They had to camp out for yet another whole winter before finally being rescued in November of 1904 by the Argentine corvette Uruguay. A happy ending, but a failed expedition. 2 winters spent anywhere but indoors, especially in Antarctica. That is a disaster to me. Next on the list is the Mount Erebus disaster. On November 28th, 1979, Air New Zealand Flight 901, a sightseeing flight, crashed into Mount Erebus in Antarctica. The flight was carrying 257 passengers and crew eager to view the Antarctic landscape, and the crash was caused by a navigational error. The flight crew were relying on incorrect coordinates programmed into the aircraft's computer system, believing they were flying over McMurdo Sound, a large body of water, when in reality, they were headed directly towards Mount Erebus, an active volcano. Poor visibility due to overcast conditions and whiteout snow also made it really difficult to visually identify the mountain in time to avoid crashing into it. Upon impact, the aircraft disintegrated, taking the lives of all 257 people on board instantly. The Comandante Ferraz Station fire on February 25th, 2012 at the Brazilian Antarctic Research Station in Antarctica. A deadly fire broke out. The fire resulted in the loss of 2 lives. The fire broke out in a machine room at the station, quickly spreading due to the intense winds and the flammable materials inside. 69 people present at the station were evacuated, but tragically 2 members of the Brazilian Navy lost their lives during the incident. The fire completely destroyed a significant portion of the research station, laboratories, living quarters, as well as valuable scientific equipment. It's believed that the fire broke out after an explosion caused by a short circuit. Next, we have the disappearance of Carl R. Disch. Carl Robert Disch was an ionospheric physicist working for the National Bureau of Standards. He disappeared near Byrd Station, Antarctica on May 8, 1965, and is presumed dead. Disch was stationed at the Radio Noise Building of Byrd Station, where he conducted ionospheric studies. On the morning of May 8th, he left the Radio Noise Building to return to the main station complex. When he failed to arrive at the main station within a reasonable time, though, a search was launched. They spotted his trail at first, but the search party had to return to the station to refuel, and by the time they returned, his trail had been covered by drifting snow and he was never found. They tried to increase the visibility of the station. They fired off flares. They used extra floodlights, but there was still no sign of him. And what made things even worse was the temperatures had dropped as low as -42. The search was eventually called off on May 14th, and Disch was declared presumed dead. He was only 26 years old. Number 3, the Academic Shokalsky. The Academic Shokalsky, a Russian research vessel, became trapped in Antarctic ice on December 24th of 2013. Merry goddamn Christmas. The ship was carrying a team of scientists, journalists, and tourists who were on expedition to retrace the steps of Australian explorer Douglas Mawson. The situation was caused by a combination of rapidly changing weather conditions and large ice flows. And the ship's crew tried to navigate through the ice, but the surrounding ice pack just closed in around them, trapping the vessel. They tried to break through the ice, which didn't work, so they tried waiting for natural movements in the ice pack to create openings, but no luck there either. The passengers and crew were stuck for over a week until finally a Chinese icebreaker, the Zhulong, and Australian icebreaker, the Aurora Australis, were sent to assist. And after several days, the passengers and crew members were airlifted to safety by a helicopter from the Zhulong, while the remaining crew stayed aboard the ship to sail it back home once the conditions were more favorable. Eventually, a break in the ice did allow for the ship to maneuver and escape on January 7th, reaching open water and ending the entire ordeal. The tragic incident involving Jeremy Bailey, David Wild, John Wilson, and John Ross occurred in 1965 near the Heimfort Mountains in East Antarctica. So this group was traveling on a muskeg tractor and its sledges with a team of dogs running behind them. 3 of the men were in the cab of the muskeg, and John Ross sat on the sledge at the back, close to the Huskies. Bailey was driving, Wild and Wilson were scanning the ice ahead. At around 8:30, the dogs alongside the sledge suddenly stopped running, and the sledge came to an abrupt halt. Ross realized something was off and turned to find that the muskeg had disappeared from view. He ran up to the first sledge to see that it had wedged into the top of a large crevice that ran across their path. The muskeg had fallen about 30 meters or 100 feet into the crevice, with its tracks wedged against one ice wall and the cab flattened against the other. So Ross called out, but there was no response from the men inside the cab down there. After some time, Bailey's voice was actually heard, confirming that Wild had died, and both Bailey and Wilson were seriously injured. Ross tried descending into the crevice to help, but it was pretty treacherous. Bailey told Ross, don't come down here, don't risk it. But Ross started descending anyway. It was clear that Bailey was also severely injured, unable to move. Ross continued his attempts to reach them, but Bailey eventually stopped responding. The last sound Ross heard from the crevice was a scream from Bailey. Finally, we have the Terra Nova Expedition. The Terra Nova Expedition, led by Captain Robert Falcon Scott, was a British Antarctic expedition that took place between 1910 and 1913. The primary objective was to be the first to reach the South Pole. And in January 1911, the expedition established its base, known as Cape Evans on Ross Island in Antarctica. Over the next 2 years, the team conducted scientific research and made some attempts to reach the South Pole, but on January 17th of 1912, after a long and brutal journey, a 5-man party led by Scott finally reached the South Pole, only to be met with a Norwegian flag planted in the ground. Yeah, a Norwegian expedition led by Roald Amundsen had beaten them to the punch just over a month earlier. There's a photo online of the group just after they'd reached their destination and made that disappointing discovery. It's pretty rough to look at. And now, completely disheartened, the team began their long journey back to Cape Evans, but they would never make it back. They faced increasingly harsh conditions on their return journey. By late March of 1912, they were caught in a fierce blizzard, unable to continue their journey, and the men were just stuck in their tents basically. They struggled with frostbite, complete exhaustion, and starvation. Scott and his 2 remaining companions, Edward Wilson and Henry Bowers, died in extreme cold and exhaustion in their tent, just 11 miles from a supply depot. And we're starting off the list at number 10 with the Jenny. The Jenny was an English ship that left port on the Isle of Wight in 1822. Now, there isn't a whole lot of detail as to what happened to the ship, as the story has been around for years but has never been 100% verified. At some point during the journey, though, the ship became trapped in ice somewhere in the Drake Passage, about a year after they set sail. The ship wasn't discovered though until 1840 by a Captain Brighton on a whaling ship called Hope. On the frozen Jenny were supposedly the bodies of the crew members, eerily well preserved because of the cold, frozen climate. And the captain's last log entry had been made on January 17th of 1823. Some stories go that Brighton's crew was then haunted by the ghosts of the Jenny, even seeing a ghostly image of the ship appear at night floating through the ocean. And at number 9, we have the Ningen. Cryptid time! Love my monsters. The Ningen is a cryptid that originates from Japanese folklore and modern urban legends. The term Ningen translates to human being in Japanese, but when used in the context of the cryptid, it refers to a mysterious and humanoid sea creature reported to inhabit the icy waters of the Antarctic. There are a couple different physical descriptions of the creature, but common features include a humanoid shape with a head, a torso, and like these long legs. Sometimes there's flippers involved. It's often large in size, around 20 to 30 meters in length. The Ningen is said to have smooth, pale, and rubbery skin, kind of like a beluga whale. Some accounts mention facial features, eyes, a mouth, while others describe it being completely faceless. The Ningen started circulating online in the mid-2000s when reports and alleged eyewitness accounts started being reported on the Japanese online forum website 2channel. These reports often claimed sightings by crew members of Japanese whaling vessels and fishermen in the Antarctic region. At number 8, we have the secret German base. So there's been this legend floating around for decades that the German forces set up this secretive military base in the frozen hell that is Antarctica, concealing themselves away from the prying eyes of the public in order to carry out advanced technological experiments and tests, or search for mystical artifacts that could aid them in their evil conquest. The idea that the SS were secretly experimenting with advanced technologies and high-tech weapons, or trying to find ancient, powerful artifacts buried deep beneath the icy wilderness of Antarctica is pretty insane, but so was the SS. The idea isn't even that they actually accomplished anything, just that there's a possibility that they tried. There are also some conspiracy theorists who believe that they discovered ancient alien technology buried in the ice, leading to secret research projects that may have even continued after the end of the war. Others believe that Antarctica could have been a refuge for Mr. H, a place where his dream of creating a superhuman Aryan race could continue in isolation. Continuing along with the whole World War II secret base legend, let's talk about the possible destruction of this said German base. After the war in 1946 and 47, the US sent this huge fleet to Antarctica, and what were they doing? Never been 100% verified, kept mostly secret from the public. So there are those that believe that they'd been tasked with destroying this secret German base. Now, this would have been a pretty easy mission, right? The war was won, base was totally free of any soldiers, just fly on over there and blow it up. Could have definitely been the case, but if we're talking about the fact that maybe there were Germans still there long after the war, then this, would have been a much tougher mission. So, I don't know. Maybe nothing happened. Probably nothing happened. I probably sound incredibly insane right now, but it's fun to imagine these things, right? Number 6, Lake Vostok. Lake Vostok, hiding beneath Antarctica's icy surface, is a massive subglacial lake that's captured the imagination of scientists and conspiracy theorists for years. It's been locked away for millions of years. It's one of the largest lakes of its kind on Earth. And what's so intriguing about it is, of course, the isolation. What kind of life could be down there? Some scientists speculate about the possibility of discovering new species of fish and other unknown life forms. There have also been strange radar readings that could point to anomalies beneath the ice. The wilder conspiracy theories, of course, involve an ancient civilization of some kind lost under the ice, but no one's drilled all the way through the ice to take a peek. So some say it's because of the risk of maybe contaminating whatever could be down there, seeing as it's been locked away for so long. But others think maybe there's just something they're not telling us, government cover-up type stuff. But what do you think? as always, share your thoughts down in the comments. Next on the list, we have the haunting of Deception Island. Deception Island kind of looks like a frozen hellscape. It used to be the site of several whaling stations that have long since been abandoned. The whaling operations were established in the early 20th century, and a Norwegian-Chilean whaling station named Hector was operational on the island until the Great Depression forced it to close. During World War II, the British established a military presence on Deception Island named Operation Tabarin. The island was a monitoring and control point to counter potential German activity in Antarctica, and after the war, the station was turned over to civilian use for scientific research. Some visitors and researchers have reported strange occurrences and ghostly sightings on the island. One of the most well-known stories is about the British research station called Base B, which operated on the island in the late 1940s. According to the legend, the research station was abandoned abruptly because of unexplained and mysterious incidents. Some versions of the story claim that the researchers started seeing paranormal stuff going on, leading them to flee the station in horror. Number 4, Antarctic Godzilla. That's an intriguing title, isn't it? So it's February 13th, 1958. It's not actually, just imagine. A chilly evening in the Antarctic. The Japanese research vessel Soya Nihongo is cruising along the Lutzow Home Bay, minding its own business. It's 7 p.m. That crew's probably sipping some hot cocoa or whatever they do on research vessels when they're not actually researching. Then, out of nowhere, this colossal sea mammal, or some like to call it the Antarctic Godzilla, decides to make a grand appearance. Fast forward to 1974, off the Latelton Peninsula, another Japanese fishing vessel, probably thinking they were in for a routine day of catching fish, spots a creature that some folks think might be the same beastie encountered back in 58. They call it Kabagon. The creatures were both said to have large eyes and heads with grayish skin. Number 3, Organism 46b. So remember Lake Vostok? Well, this ties into that. Organism 46b is an urban legend centered around a mysterious aquatic creature, allegedly discovered by Russian scientists while drilling in Voltok Lake. The creature is said to be a gelatinous organism, almost like a giant squid, with incredibly deadly venom and the ability to rapidly shapeshift and mimic other marine life. According to the legend, Organism 46b has a unique method of hunting. It can extend a set of thin, flexible filaments from its body to paralyze and then consume its prey. The legend claims that the Russian scientists experimented with Organism 46b, attempting to understand its abilities and potentially weaponize them. These experiments went haywire, resulting in the deaths of several researchers. Then the Russian government covered up the incident. All sounds totally 100% true to me. At second place, we have aliens and UFOs. So there are all kinds of myths and stories, and just people full on believing that Antarctica is teeming with alien life, hidden alien bases buried beneath the ice, crashed UFOs, government experiments involving aliens, the list goes on and on. In 2018, an ex-Navy SEAL disclosed information to an investigative journalist about a mysterious structure he and his team encountered during a classified mission in August of 2003. According to him, the team discovered a large dark structure protruding from the ice. The structure had doors, which when pushed, revealed a long hallway illuminated by green light, which didn't seem to come from any particular source. The walls inside were adorned with symbols and hieroglyphics that didn't resemble any seen on Earth. The remoteness of Antarctica with its extreme climate does make for the perfect setting for clandestine alien activities. And we're finishing off the list with another ghost story. The ghosts of Sir Robert Scott's tragic expedition. The expedition, officially known as the Terra Nova expedition, aimed to be the first to reach the South Pole. They would unfortunately never return. In 1911, Scott and his team of 25 men departed from Cape Evans, leaving behind the hut that would later become this iconic symbol of their ill-fated journey. The Cape Evans hut was the main hub before the group set off in the main stretch of their journey. The hut, preserved by the extreme cold temperatures of the Antarctic, has become a time capsule of the era. Scientific equipment, personal belongings, even frozen specimens like penguins the group had been studying remain in the same positions that they were right before they left. Despite its frozen state, the hut is not said to be totally devoid of activity. And I'm not talking about staff and stuff like that. Visitors and staff who have entered Scott's hut often report experiencing an eerie and unsettling feeling. Now that's to be expected, but the environment seems to carry this emotional weight, a sense of sadness and emptiness. But it's not just feelings they have. Odd things are said to happen there. Ghostly whispers, sightings of shadowy figures, and objects being found in places where they weren't left before.